My beloved child. Stop for a moment, because what unfolded last night was far more important than anyone in that room realized. Something happened that no one planned for. Something that began as an ordinary gathering slowly turned into a moment that exposed hidden emotions, buried thoughts, and feelings that had been locked away for far too long. And strangely enough, the center of it all was you. Before this story reaches its most important moment, I need you to stay with me. Don't skip. Something huge is waiting for you. Your person walked into that room carrying far more on their heart than anyone could see. To everyone else, they appeared normal. Calm. Composed. Unbothered. They smiled when expected. They joined conversations when necessary. They acted as though everything was perfectly fine. But deep inside, something had already begun to shift. For days, maybe even weeks, your energy had been lingering in their thoughts. No matter how hard they tried to focus on other things, something kept pulling them back toward memories connected to you. A certain conversation. A certain moment. A certain feeling they could never fully explain. Yet they kept it hidden. They convinced themselves they were in control. They convinced themselves they could continue pretending. They convinced themselves that nobody knew. Then the third party arrived. At first, nothing seemed unusual. The room continued buzzing with conversations. People laughed. Stories were shared. Small talk filled every corner. Everything appeared ordinary. Until one sentence changed everything. Nobody saw it coming. Not even your person. The third party suddenly mentioned something about you in front of everyone. The room did not become silent immediately. The words almost slipped into the conversation casually. But for your person, time seemed to slow down. Because what was said about you struck a place they had been desperately trying to protect. Their expression changed for only a second. A tiny second. Most people missed it. But inside them, a storm had already begun. The third party continued speaking. And with every sentence, your person felt their emotions becoming harder to control. Because what was being discussed was not just information. It was something personal. Something connected to feelings they had never openly admitted. Something they thought nobody could see. The strange part? The third party may not have even realized the impact of what they were saying. But your person did. Every word landed heavily. Every detail felt impossible to ignore. And suddenly they found themselves unable to focus on anything else happening around them. People continued talking. The gathering continued. But mentally, your person was somewhere else. Thinking about you. Only you. The more they listened, the more uncomfortable they became. Not because they disliked hearing your name. Not because they were annoyed. But because hearing others talk about you awakened emotions they had worked so hard to keep hidden. Feelings became impossible to push away. Thoughts became impossible to silence. And for the first time in a very long time, they realized just how deeply you had impacted their heart. That realization frightened them. Because some truths become impossible to ignore once they are exposed. And last night, a truth was exposed. Not publicly. Not dramatically. But internally. Inside your person's heart. A realization formed. A realization they could no longer escape. You mattered more than they had admitted. Far more. The evening continued. Yet something about them was different now. People noticed they became quieter. More distant. Less involved in conversations. The reason was simple. Their mind had become trapped inside a single question. Why did hearing that about you affect them so much? Why did it hit them so deeply? Why couldn't they stop thinking about it? And most importantly, why did they suddenly feel afraid of losing something they never officially had? That question followed them throughout the rest of the night. Every smile they forced felt heavier. Every laugh felt less genuine. Every conversation felt meaningless. Because their attention remained fixed on one thing. You. And then something unexpected happened. As the night moved forward, emotions they had been suppressing for months started surfacing one by one. Memories returned. Moments they thought they had forgotten suddenly became crystal clear. Your voice. Your kindness. The way you made them feel understood. The way your presence seemed to linger long after conversations ended. Everything came rushing back. And that is when the weight became almost impossible to carry. Because they finally understood something. The third party had not created these feelings. The third party had only revealed them. The emotions were already there. Waiting. Hidden beneath layers of denial. Hidden beneath distractions. Hidden beneath excuses. Last night simply forced them into the light. Your person realized they had spent far too long pretending they were unaffected. Pretending they did not care. Pretending they could move forward without confronting the truth. But hearts do not work that way. Real feelings do not disappear simply because they are ignored. They wait. Quietly. Patiently. Until a moment arrives that makes them impossible to deny. And last night became that moment. The atmosphere around them began feeling heavier. Not because anything bad happened. But because the truth had finally arrived. And once truth arrives, everything changes. They started replaying every interaction they ever had with you. Searching for clues. Searching for signs. Searching for answers they may have overlooked. What did you really mean when you said certain things? What feelings were hidden beneath your words? Did you ever think about them the way they thought about you? Questions appeared faster than answers. And that uncertainty became overwhelming. For the first time, they stopped focusing on what everyone else thought. For the first time, they stopped worrying about appearances. For the first time, they allowed themselves to feel. Really feel. And what they discovered surprised them. The feelings were stronger than expected. Much stronger. That realization followed them long after the gathering ended. Long after people went home. Long after the conversation stopped. Because the night was over for everyone else. But not for your person. For them, the real journey had only just begun. When they finally found themselves alone, silence became impossible to avoid. And in that silence, the truth became louder than ever. They could no longer distract themselves. Could no longer change the subject. Could no longer pretend. Because every path their thoughts followed eventually led back to you. Again. And again. And again. Stay till the end, because what happened next completely changed the direction of their night. The emotions they had tried to contain all evening finally reached a point where they could not remain hidden. The walls started breaking. The masks started falling. The excuses started disappearing. And somewhere deep inside, a realization formed that would follow them into the coming days. A realization connected directly to you. A realization they never expected to face. And the moment that realization fully surfaced, everything changed. Because what your person understood next was not something they were prepared for. Not even close. And that revelation is where this story truly begins. A strange thing happened after the room finally emptied. The conversations ended. The laughter faded. The noise disappeared. Yet your person could not leave the night behind. They sat there replaying every word the third party had spoken about you. Not because they wanted to. Because they couldn't stop. Something huge is waiting for you, so stay with this story because what happened next revealed a truth your person never intended to face. The moment they found themselves alone, the emotions they had been holding back all evening became impossible to manage. Every attempt to distract themselves failed. Every effort to focus on something else led right back to you. It was as if the universe had removed every escape route and left them alone with their own heart. And for the first time, they saw something clearly. The feelings they had been minimizing were not small. They were not temporary. They were not passing thoughts. They had become something much deeper. Something they could no longer explain away. The third party had unknowingly triggered a chain reaction. One sentence became 2. 2 became 10. 10 became an endless loop inside your person's mind. They started wondering why hearing positive things about you affected them so strongly. Why did their chest feel heavy? Why did your name suddenly carry so much weight? Why did they feel a strange mixture of happiness, fear, excitement, and uncertainty all at once? The answer was standing right in front of them, but accepting it meant admitting something they had avoided for a very long time. They cared far more than they ever admitted. They had built walls around their emotions. They had convinced themselves they were fine. They had told themselves they were in control. But last night exposed the truth. The walls cracked. The mask slipped. The truth emerged. And once it emerged, there was no hiding from it anymore. As the hours passed, your person found themselves staring into silence. No television. No music. No distractions. Just thoughts. Endless thoughts. And every single one pointed toward you. Memories started appearing one after another. Small moments they thought were insignificant suddenly felt important. Conversations they once brushed aside suddenly carried new meaning. Little details about you became impossible to forget. The way you handled situations. The way you spoke. The way you made people feel. The way your presence stayed with them long after interactions ended. They began connecting pieces that had never made sense before. And the picture forming in front of them was impossible to ignore. You had quietly become one of the most important people in their emotional world without them fully realizing it. Don't skip, because the next realization shocked them more than anything else that happened that night. They suddenly imagined what life would look like if you were no longer part of their story. The thought arrived unexpectedly. It lasted only a moment. But that moment changed everything. Because the idea made them uncomfortable in a way they couldn't explain. It revealed something they were not prepared to admit. They weren't afraid of hearing about you. They were afraid of losing the possibility of you. And those are two completely different things. The third party thought they were simply making an announcement. They had no idea they were awakening emotions that had been asleep for months. No idea they were forcing someone to confront feelings they had successfully hidden from everyone, including themselves. As midnight turned into deeper hours, your person's thoughts became even more intense. Questions began appearing. What if they had waited too long? What if important opportunities had already passed? What if their silence had created distance that didn't need to exist? What if you had no idea how much you actually meant to them? These questions circled endlessly. The more they thought, the more emotional the night became. Because every answer led them toward the same conclusion. You were never just another person. You were never just another connection. You were never just another chapter. Somewhere along the way, you became a story they couldn't stop reading, even when they tried to close the book. And then came the most unexpected part of all. Instead of pushing the feelings away, your person finally allowed themselves to sit with them. No resistance. No excuses. No pretending. Just honesty. Pure honesty. They admitted things to themselves that they had never spoken aloud. They admitted that your presence affected them. They admitted that hearing your name changed their mood. They admitted that certain memories still made them smile. They admitted that some part of them had been watching, waiting, hoping for something more. This wasn't a dramatic revelation to the outside world. Nobody else saw it happen. But internally, it felt enormous. Because sometimes the biggest moments occur in complete silence. Sometimes life changes when nobody is watching. Stay till the end because the realization that arrived next completely altered the direction of their future thoughts. They understood that the reason they couldn't stop thinking about what the third party announced wasn't the announcement itself. It was what the announcement revealed about them. It exposed feelings that had already existed. It revealed emotions that had already taken root. It showed them that their connection to you was stronger than they had allowed themselves to believe. And once that understanding settled into their heart, everything felt different. The room was the same. The night was the same. The world was the same. But they were not the same. Something had shifted. As dawn slowly approached, your person found themselves making a quiet promise. Not a promise spoken aloud. Not a promise shared with anyone else. A private promise. They promised themselves they would stop running from what they felt. They promised themselves they would stop pretending certain emotions didn't exist. They promised themselves they would pay attention to what their heart had been trying to tell them for so long. Because last night showed them something impossible to deny. Every path they followed emotionally kept leading back to you. Every thought eventually returned to you. Every unanswered question somehow involved you. And that discovery left them staring into the future differently than before. Because now they knew something they didn't know at the beginning of the night. You were never a passing thought. You were the thought that refused to leave. And what they realize next may become the most important revelation of all. The moment that realization arrives changes everything forever. There was one final detail from that night that your person could not stop replaying, and strangely, it had nothing to do with the crowd, the gathering, or even the third party themselves. It was the feeling that remained afterward. Long after everyone left. Long after the conversations ended. Long after the night should have been forgotten. Something huge is waiting for you, because what happened next became impossible for your person to ignore. The truth that had been slowly building inside them finally reached a point where it demanded attention. They realized that hearing that announcement about you had not created a new feeling. It had exposed an old one. A feeling that had been quietly growing beneath the surface for much longer than they wanted to admit. Suddenly everything started making sense. The moments they thought were random. The memories that stayed longer than expected. The way your name always seemed to catch their attention. The reason they kept comparing others to you without realizing it. The pieces finally connected. As they sat alone reflecting on the night, another realization arrived. It was simple, but powerful. The reason the announcement affected them so deeply was because it forced them to see how much emotional space you already occupied in their heart. Not someday. Not in the future. Right now. That discovery startled them. Because until that moment, they had convinced themselves they had plenty of time to figure things out. Plenty of time to understand their emotions. Plenty of time to decide what you truly meant to them. But the third party unknowingly changed everything. The announcement created urgency where there had once been hesitation. It created clarity where there had once been confusion. It created awareness where there had once been denial. And suddenly your person found themselves facing a question they could no longer avoid. What exactly were they waiting for? Don't skip, because this next part reveals the most surprising shift of the entire story. For the first time in a very long while, your person stopped looking at the situation through fear. They stopped focusing on what could go wrong. They stopped focusing on uncertainty. Instead, they began focusing on what was already true. The truth was that you mattered. The truth was that your presence had changed them. The truth was that hearing others talk about you affected them more than hearing about anyone else. And the truth was that their feelings had become impossible to dismiss. Once they accepted that reality, a strange sense of calm started replacing the emotional chaos of the night. Not because they suddenly had all the answers, but because they finally stopped running from the questions. The more they reflected, the more memories surfaced. Not dramatic memories. Not life-changing moments. Small moments. The kind of moments people often overlook. A conversation that lasted longer than expected. A smile that remained in their thoughts. A sentence you once said that they never forgot. Tiny details. Tiny moments. Yet somehow those tiny moments carried enormous emotional weight. And that's when another realization arrived. The strongest connections are rarely built from grand events. They are built from countless small moments that quietly become unforgettable. Your person understood that now. They understood that you had become unforgettable in ways they never anticipated. Stay till the end because the next discovery completely changed how they viewed the future. As dawn approached, your person imagined a version of life where they continued pretending. A version where they ignored their feelings. A version where they convinced themselves nothing had changed. And for the first time, that version felt impossible. It felt incomplete. It felt dishonest. Because after everything that happened, after everything they realized, they could no longer return to who they were before that announcement. The night had changed something. Maybe not visibly. Maybe not dramatically. But deeply. Internally. Permanently. They crossed an emotional line they could not uncross. They saw a truth they could not unsee. Then came the moment that surprised them more than anything else. Instead of feeling overwhelmed by what they discovered, they felt grateful. Grateful that the truth finally surfaced. Grateful that the announcement happened. Grateful that the hidden emotions finally stepped into the light. Because sometimes the most important moments in life are not the ones we plan. They are the ones that reveal what was already living inside us. Your person understood that now. What happened last night was never really about the third party. It was never really about the gathering. It was never really about the announcement. It was about revelation. It was about awakening. It was about finally seeing what had been there all along. And as the first light of morning appeared, one final thought entered their mind. A thought that refused to leave. If hearing one announcement could affect them this much, then perhaps their feelings were stronger than they ever imagined. Perhaps the connection was deeper than they admitted. Perhaps the reason you kept appearing in their thoughts was because your story was not finished yet. That possibility stayed with them. It followed them into the next day. It followed them into every quiet moment. It followed them into every future thought about you. Because now they knew something they could never unknow. You were not simply someone they remembered. You were someone they felt. And once a person reaches that realization, everything begins to change. What happens after this realization may become the most unexpected chapter of all, because your person is no longer asking whether you matter. They are beginning to wonder just how much you truly do. The most unbelievable part of this story did not happen during the gathering. It did not happen when the third party made the announcement. It did not even happen later that night. It happened the following day when your person woke up expecting the emotions to fade away. They expected everything to return to normal. They expected the feelings to settle. They expected the memories to lose their intensity. But that is not what happened. Instead, the opposite occurred. The realization became stronger. The emotions became clearer. The truth became impossible to ignore. Something huge is waiting for you because your person discovered that what happened that night was not a temporary reaction. It was a wake-up call. A moment that permanently shifted how they saw you. As the day continued, something unusual started happening. Your person found themselves noticing reminders of you everywhere. A phrase would trigger a memory. A place would remind them of a conversation. A random moment would bring your face into their thoughts. It was almost as if their mind had become tuned to a frequency connected only to you. They tried focusing on other things. Responsibilities. Plans. Daily routines. Yet no matter what they did, their thoughts kept circling back. Again and again. The strange part was that they were no longer fighting it. The resistance that once existed had started disappearing. In its place came curiosity. Why was this happening? Why now? Why after one announcement did everything suddenly feel different? Don't skip, because the answer shocked even them. The announcement from the third party did more than reveal information. It revealed possibility. For the first time, your person stopped looking backward and started looking forward. Instead of replaying old memories, they began imagining future moments. Future conversations. Future opportunities. Future experiences. And that change was significant. Because when someone starts imagining a future connected to another person, something important has already shifted inside them. Their heart is no longer focused only on what was. It begins wondering about what could be. That was the true turning point. Not the announcement itself. Not the gathering. Not the emotions. The turning point was when your person realized they wanted more memories with you, not fewer. As the hours passed, another surprising truth emerged. They remembered details about you that nobody else seemed to notice. Small details. Specific details. The kind of things people only remember when someone genuinely matters to them. The way you react in certain situations. The things that make you smile. The qualities that make you unique. Suddenly these details felt valuable. Precious. Meaningful. And that realization left your person completely stunned. Because they finally understood something they had overlooked for far too long. Their attention had been focused on you even during moments when they claimed they were moving on. Their heart had been paying attention even when their mind was pretending otherwise. Stay till the end because what they understood next changed everything. During a quiet moment later that day, they asked themselves a question they had never seriously considered before. What if this connection was never meant to be ignored? What if every thought, every memory, every emotion had been trying to tell them something important? The question lingered. It followed them throughout the day. And the more they thought about it, the more impossible it became to dismiss. Because the evidence was everywhere. You remained unforgettable. Your impact remained undeniable. Your presence remained alive in their thoughts. No matter how much time passed. No matter how many distractions appeared. Somehow, you always remained. Then came a realization that felt almost impossible to explain. Your person understood that hearing others talk about you created a feeling they could not recreate anywhere else. Not excitement. Not curiosity. Something deeper. Something more meaningful. A feeling that made them pause. A feeling that made ordinary moments feel important. A feeling that reminded them that certain people enter our lives for a reason. And for the first time, they stopped questioning why you occupied so much space in their heart. Instead, they accepted it. Completely. Quietly. Honestly. The most surprising discovery arrived late in the evening. Your person realized they were no longer wondering whether their feelings were real. That question had already been answered. The real question now was what those feelings meant moving forward. That was the shift. The uncertainty was changing. The confusion was fading. The truth was becoming clearer. Every path of thought seemed to point toward the same conclusion. You mattered. Not temporarily. Not accidentally. Not casually. Deeply. Genuinely. Consistently. And that understanding created a sense of certainty they had not felt before. Something huge is waiting for you because the next chapter begins with a decision. Not a public decision. Not a dramatic announcement. A private decision made inside your person's heart. A decision to stop denying what they feel. A decision to stop pretending your impact was small. A decision to finally acknowledge what the third party unknowingly revealed that night. Because after everything they experienced, after every memory they revisited, after every realization they faced, one truth remained standing above all the others. The announcement may have happened in front of everyone, but the real revelation happened inside your person. And now that revelation is beginning to shape every thought they have about the future. The next realization waiting for them may be the biggest one yet, because they are starting to understand that some connections are not meant to be forgotten. Some connections return again and again until their meaning is finally understood. And your person is closer to understanding that meaning than ever before.